Now, I suppose the next thing really to cover is the Pokemon, because obviously that's what the series is known for. Um, so I'll just quickly go through all of these Pokemon, giving some thoughts on the kind of rumors about them as well as the confirmed information. So we'll start with the three starter Pokemon, which are always pretty much the first revealed Pokemon along with the legendaries. So we'll start with the grass Pokemon, who is Chespin. Now, obviously, all we know so far is that it's a grass type, and the look of the Pokemon. We know a few of its moves, but it's just standard like fare, tackle, growl, roll out, and I think vine whip. Standard grass type moves. We don't know any specifics about if it's going to learn a signature move. But either way, the design, I like it. It's it's very different from the other grass Pokemon in that we've had mainly like four-legged kind of animals like Bulbasaur and Turtwig, and then we've had kind of reptilians on their kind of two legs in Snivy and Trico. So there's been as Chikorita was also four-legged as well. So we finally get a more mammal kind of like grass Pokemon standing on two legs. So that makes it interesting and unique. It's got a kind of chestnut style kind of design to it to make it kind of appear like a grass Pokemon. So I assume at some stage it'll probably learn moves like Seed Bomb, that sort of thing, and maybe we'll have a move related to like acorns or chestnut, like it kind of has on its head or something like that. That's like a signature move. But seems very interesting, and the rumors about this guy are that at some stage when he evolves, either it be stage 1 or 2, it is going to develop a dark typing as well, so grass dark at the end, and that will be interesting in that I think there already are a few grass dark Pokemon, but it's definitely not the most. There's not a lot of grass dark Pokemon out there, so that'll be interesting, and especially from a starter Pokemon to have grass dark, it's gonna be cool as well. So that means I assume it'll get moves like Crunch, and maybe it sounds like it's going to be a more physically based Pokemon, so not really many special moves on this guy, I think, based on his look. So Grass Dark is a interesting type, and I'd say Chespin's probably my favourite of the three starter Pokemon so far. But anyway, we'll move on to Fennekin, who's the fire starter Pokemon. Um, he's a Firefox Pokemon, and we've had a few Firefox Pokemon before, mainly I think Vulpix and Flareon's basically a Firefox as well. So a few kind of similar type fire Pokemon out there. But in terms of a starter Pokemon, I think it is quite unique because we've had Charmander, Cyndaquil, um, Torchic, Chimchar, and okay, what I keep forgetting the name of the basic Pokemon for Emboar. Is Emboar? Uh, it's just completely escaping me now. Um, oh, wait, I have it over here. Tepig. There. Thank you, Generation 5 wall chart. Anyway, Tepig. So we've had a few kind of quadruped um, fire Pokemon before, but this is the first kind of fox kind of type fire Pokemon we've had, and um, I assume it's mainly going to be maybe a mix. Maybe it's going to have some physical moves, have some special moves, and have kind of reasonably good like stats with regards to each one. So that could be interesting depending on how it goes. And but really, there's not a whole lot interesting about him. There is a few Pokemon that look very similar to him. There are a few Pokemon with the same kind of style. But the interesting thing, maybe if the rumors turn out to be true, that it is in fact going to be a Fire Psychic Pokemon by Stage 2, um, if that's true, that would make it very interesting because off the top of my head, the only Fire Psychic Pokemon I can think of is Victini. So that would be a very unique typing to have and very effective. If it has gets some powerful fire and psychic moves by the end, that'll make it very unique. And especially like a psychic type in a more kind of dog fox type Pokemon is pretty unique as well. So could be very. I think Fennekin has a lot of potential if some of these rumors turn out to be true. If it just turns out to be like standard fire, could be like a bit kind of a boring Pokemon, maybe too similar to like Flareon or something like that, as I said. But overall, it's a pretty nice design. Um, Next, we have Froakie, who's the water Pokemon, based on a frog. And again, we have had kind of some frog kind of based inspired designs like Pokemon like Palpitoad, Poliwag, the kind of Poly Pokemon, Poliwrath, Poliwhirl, Politoed. Um, but I think this is the one that's most similar to a frog. It's basically a frog Pokemon. Not a whole lot changed from a standard frog, and it looks very interesting, definitely, because you I think this one has a lot of potential, depending on how its like evolutions go. If its third evolution is this kind of Venusaur looking thing where it's because Venusaur is like Bulbasaur, but it's just kind of bigger, bulkier, got a few extra kind of stuff with the flower. I think they could do something similar with Froakie, where it keeps the same basic form, but just gets bigger and kind of bulkier. So having this kind of like giant frog with what we assume, if the rumors are true, is going to be a water fighting Pokemon by the time it reaches stage 2, could be like very interesting. And as well as that, looking at those types, grass, dark, fire, psychic, water fighting, those add to the kind of battle between the three starters. In that, if you say pit the grass one against the water one, grass beats water, but Froakie's fighting type is super effective against Chespin's dark typing, and then Fennekin is going to be super effective because it's a fire Pokemon against Chespin, but Psychic doesn't work really well on dark. So there's some nice matchups, I think, with these three kind of dual typings. And Froakie, I think, is another one with a lot of potential, but a lot depends on how it's what it looks like by its third evolution. Um, I'll quickly touch on the box art Pokemon, the two legendaries that we know so far, who are for X we have Xerneas, um, who's a very interesting Pokemon, looking a bit like Arceus. That Pokemon's just names like impossible to pronounce. Arceus or Arceus or however you pronounce his name. He looks a bit like that, but I really like the way they kind of make the X with the horns on this guy. No idea really on the typing. So it's just a kind of hard one because we don't know really any of its moves. We don't know its typing. I have a feeling it could be maybe grass typed or maybe steel, something like that, somewhere in it. But definitely it's interesting, X and Y, and with the Y Pokemon, Yveltal, Yveltal, really difficult one to pronounce. But Yveltal or Veltal. Um, Very interesting looking kind of flying Pokemon because it's completely designed for it to be the shape of a Y. And obviously, I think one of its types is going to be flying, but in combination with what is going to be the interesting thing. Not much else to really say about it because legendary Pokemon aren't as interesting to me because I'm realistically not really going to use them over the course of the game beyond catching them. But they're nice looking Pokemon, definitely. We move on to Sylveon, which is the new evolution who evolves from Eevee. Now, unknown type, though I think I'll get into now the whole fairy type debate. Now, fairy type has not yet been confirmed, but is pretty highly rumoured because you look at Sylveon and it doesn't instantly fit into a type that we know already. So that's where the whole fairy type debate comes from. There's been a few rumours to kind of back it up as well, though again, as I said, nothing confirmed yet. I'm not really sure about the moves that we've seen Sylveon use in the trailers because it doesn't say what they are. But supposedly from the rumours we've heard that there is going to be a fairy type, and that it's going to be um, It's going to be weak to poison types and steel types. So poison and steel attacks are going to be super effective against fairies. Fairies are going to be immune to dragon type Pokemon, and they're going to be have super effective attacks against dragons, dark types, and fighting types. And fairy type attacks will be resisted by fire and psychic. So that makes for really interesting kind of type matchups. I think that fairies will be interesting counters to dragons, which are some of the most powerful Pokemon in the kind of metagame type thing. There are a lot of them are powerful dragons, so having a Pokemon that's immune to dragon attacks, not effective at all, is good. And adding the fairy type also gives steel and poison a bit more to go on offensively in that. Not off the top of my head, I can think of I think poison is super effective against grass, and that's about it. Steel is super effective against ice and maybe rock. So adding some extra super effective ones for those types as well. So overall, I think this idea of fairy type, should it be true, is an interesting idea, and I like it. That it's going to add a lot to the whole type chart, basically. And the resistances are interesting in that, like, fairy type attacks are going to be resisted by fire and psychic. Psychic, I get. Fire is a bit of an odd one where, like, they've just decided on fire as being resisted. So to me, if Sylveon turns out to be a fairy type and there is a fairy type, that's it. I like it. I want that to happen. I won't be incredibly disappointed if there's not, but if there isn't, like, then what type is Sylveon? Like the only ones I could think of are that they give it a normal, it's normal typed or dragon typed Sylveon. To me, it doesn't look overly like a dragon, and there's nothing to me that really suggests that it's a dragon type. Um, Normal type, I don't think they'll do, just because the whole thing about Eevee is that it evolves and its type changes completely. So they've really been keeping, like, Sylveon's been very present in a lot of the news and videos that have come out about Pokemon X and Y, but they purposefully never really stated what its type is. So they're keeping something back here. So I think Fairy type, or whatever the new type is going to be called, if there is one, is going to be very interesting, and I hope it happens. We don't know how Eevee evolves into Sylveon at all, so it'll probably be some form of, like, new evolution stone or something like that. Or maybe they'll use Moonstone to make basically Moonstone the fairy type kind of evolution stone. Because if they introduce the fairy type, they're going to have to retroactively give other Pokemon from past generations fairy typing. So more than likely we'll get Clefairy, Clefable, those type Pokemon fairy typing. They said Mawile is going to be a fairy type as well. But again, fairy type is just a rumor right now. All we know is that Sylveon is an evolution, and that is about it. Next we move on to the new Mewtwo form. And the one that we've seen an image of is called the Awakened State, supposedly. That's from the movie that this new form is going to be in. Now, it's not a new Pokemon as such, it's just a new form of Mewtwo. And supposedly there, as well as that, there is another form of Mewtwo, so Mewtwo's going to have two forms in this game. The second form is just rumoured right now, and it's meant to be similar to Mew. Now, the interesting thing here, I suppose, is, in terms of the form, how does Mewtwo change into this form, and also how is its stats basically going to be affected by this? Mewtwo's standard stats, I think, heavily focus around special attack, and I think there's a decent amount of speed. So I'm thinking that maybe it switches that around, where it maybe loses a bit of special attack but gains a lot of speed. Maybe. But it's not the most interesting design, because I've never really liked the Mewtwo design that much. I don't hate it, but it's not my favourite design at all in Pokemon. So it's an interesting, definitely, that they're giving Mewtwo a new form, and it kind of makes sense if it's going to link into Mew again. So that could be an interesting story, if it's an important part of the game. But from there we move on to the final four Pokemon that were revealed about 2-3 weeks ago. The first one is Helioptile, whatever you pronounce it. You haven't yet got the pronunciation of these yet. Which is an electric and normal type Pokemon lizard design looks pretty cool. Looks to be this generation's kind of Pikachu-like Pokemon. There's usually a electric Pokemon that you find in the wild, about like the second, third gym sort of region in the game that is there. Now, I assume this is going to evolve into something because it looks a bit small to be a kind of basic Pokemon, though we have had Pachirisu before, so I'm not sure what they'll really do with it. I have a feeling that it probably does evolve into something a bit bigger, though it's not confirmed yet. Electric normal typing is interesting. Normal typing is a bit weird when they give it to like a kind of standard like typing like electric or something like that, because all it really does is give the Pokemon a weakness to fighting attacks and an immunity to ghost attacks. I believe that's all it really does. So that's quite good, I suppose. You know, the weakness to fighting is not great, but immunity to ghost types is fairly good if we assume the Elite Four is going to have a ghost person again. But the interesting thing about this guy, most interesting, is that it has a new signature move called Parabolic Charge, which apparently hits every Pokemon on the field if you're in like double battles or something like that. And it also drains half of the damage done as health back, so it's kind of like an electric Giga Drain type thing. I assume it may be a little less powerful than Giga Drain because it hits everything on the field, but still, that's nice that they're giving an electric Pokemon a kind of draining move, and it makes sense, you know, draining electricity. I assume Pikachu is going to get this move as well because that kind of makes sense in that in the anime, I think they often do that where Pikachu like has to drain electricity from stuff and stuff like that. So that's going to be an interesting move, I suppose, in the whole metagame. Next, we move on to Fletchling, which is the standard bird Pokemon that I assume is going to be like the first flying type Pokemon you encounter. It's a flying and normal type, which is completely expected because that's what they always do. It's surprising to think, but there is only actually, I think, two just standard flying types that don't have normal typing, and that's like Thunderous or the other one. Tornadus. I mean, sorry, Tornadus and its Tornadus Therian form. Um, so flying normal standard. I actually really like the look of this Pokemon in terms of usually these bird Pokemon are just like, oh, this is the one I'll have to catch early on in the game so I can use Fly later on. But I actually like the look of Fletching a lot. I suppose it's that it's not just a kind of standard bird. It's based on a robin, so it's a bit more colourful and like interesting. And just the really tiny legs and the kind of colouring really makes me just like this Pokemon. And I assume it's going to evolve because it looks very small. So I suppose the question is like, is it going to be a stage 2 Pokemon or stage 1 Pokemon when it evolves? Does it evolve once or twice? I assume since it's a Robin, they may do something like it only evolves once into something slightly bigger, maybe make it like Tailo. But definitely a cool one because it learns a Flame Charge is one of the moves that it has. So that kind of has the speculation going that this thing may evolve, lose the normal typing and gain fire typing and be a flying fire type like Moltres. So that would be very interesting because they never really do anything too different with the bird Pokemon in the game. So taking away that normal typing and giving it like an elemental typing like fire sounds really cool to me. As well as that, Flame Charge is really nice for a bird Pokemon. These bird Pokemon, which are usually pretty quick, that you increase the speed even more. So that could actually make this thing quite fun to use during the game if it learns some nice fire moves. But yeah, Fletching, I'm pretty positive on the bird Pokemon, when I'm usually not so much. Next Pokemon is Pancham, who is a kind of based on a panda, and is from what we know, it's just a normal fighting type Pokemon. Looks very interesting, and to me, I find a lot of similarities between this guy and Scraggy from the last generation, Generation 5, in that they both seem kind of like similar Pokemon, that they have a kind of naughty, mischievous kind of thing in their kind of Pokemon title, and they're fighting types. When there's rumors that when Pancham evolves, it gains a dark typing, which would be very similar to Scraggy evolving into Scrafty and also gaining Dark typing. And they both seem like that sort of Pokemon that's going to appear at kind of roughly the same point in the game, and something like that. So a lot of similarities, I think, between those two in terms of like the kind of standard Pokemon formulas type that they tend to use. Fighting Dark, interesting typing definitely. But the most interesting thing about Pancham is that it learns a move called Parting Shot. And now what this move does is that it lowers attack and special attack, and also allows you to switch out. So it's a kind of a volt switch type move where you do something and switch your Pokemon out. It's quite nice. Now we don't know if it actually does damage, though because it's called Parting Shot, I would assume it does something. Because usually when there's like some sort of like impact word like shot, it actually does damage as opposed to just like lowering stats. Though Strange Shot doesn't do damage, so yeah, it depends. Either way, it's quite nice. I actually doubt it probably right now that it's lower stats, allows you to switch out, and it does damage. So yeah, it probably just is stats and switch out. Either way, quite nice. Last Pokemon is Gogoat, who has been taking the Pokemon fandom by storm, supposedly, because you can ride around on him in Lumio's city. He learns the move Horn Leech and is a standard grass Pokemon. Not much to say about him. I'm quite a not overly impressed with Gogoat. He was okay. Riding around, I suppose, will be a nice thing to do. Supposedly, he's the only Pokemon you can actually ride around in the game, which kind of disappointed a lot of people when we saw that you could ride Pokemon. And you're like, oh, wow, I hope you can ride like every Pokemon around, but nope. It seems like it's only Gogoat. I like the name, but I suppose a lot of it depends on what its movesets are, what its stats are, if it evolves from something and evolves into something or anything like that. But overall, it's pretty nice. It learns Horn Leech, as I said, so it's got a grass move that does damage and takes health, which is quite nice. And they're all the Pokemon that we know so far from the game. So we have 9 completely brand new Pokemon, one new form of a Pokemon, and one new evolution of a Pokemon in Sylveon from Eevee. We don't know too many so far, and I'm just hoping that by E3, I think there's expected to be a big Pokemon X and Y kind of Q&A panel thing. I hope they show us some more Pokemon, because that's what everyone wants to know, as well as everyone wants to know basically what Sylveon's typing is, and if there's going to be a new type, as well as new Pokemon. That's what everyone is looking forward to, I think, in the coming months, in the lead up to the game coming out. But overall, I've gone through pretty much everything there. I'm super excited for the game, and hope you are too, and I hope this video has been enjoyable for you. Definitely comment below if you, with your own thoughts on the game, and what your favourite Pokemon, I suppose, from the new ones announced so far is. So, thanks for watching, and bye.